Welcome, 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 and hello, everybody that is watching here on YouTube. Welcome to the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live, powered by Ollipop.
I don't have an Ollipop.
You do not.
I got to go run and grab an Ollipop.
And
but
I'm
anyway,
here with Spencer Forsythe on the board. Parker, take it away on the Ollipop, though.
Yes, I'm going to get up, sprint to my kitchen, and grab an Ollipop here in just a second because I don't feel like I'm doing the brand justice by not having one right here like I typically do. But Ollipop, folks, is the soda that's good for you. If you haven't given them a try yet, haven't checked it out, drinkollipop.com is the place to head. Use promo code CHAMPU20 to get 20% off your first online order. Look, it comes in 16 delicious flavors, familiar flavors at that: root beer, cola, cream soda, grape soda, ginger ale, whatever your favorite soda is. Ollipop's got a flavor for you that is way healthier than your traditional alternative. Never more than 5 grams of sugar in a can of Ollipop. Always 9 grams of dietary fiber and prebiotics to enhance digestive health. So again, folks, you get health benefits from drinking Ollipop. What other soda can you say that about? If you haven't checked them out, go grab one. If you're in the Sooner State, Target, Whole Foods, Sprouts, and Walmart, where you can pick up a can, or just head to drinkollipop.com and create a custom online order. With that, I'm going to go grab an Ollipop while Brandon introduces you to the commit that will go down as potentially the least ballyhooed announcement in the history of OU football recruiting. Sadly, because he's a very good player.
Yeah, we're talking about none other than 2024 former Michigan State safety commit Reggie Powers, announced during the Kansas game. And look, we get it. We understand why it wasn't very ballyhooed. We understand why there was a lot of reservation when it comes to that announcement. But he's a box safety. So when you look at what Oklahoma has with Jaden Hardy, when you look at what they have with Michael Boganowski, you now have a guy that can play in the box, can play that cheetah position, can do a lot of different things for Oklahoma in the run game, can cover the tight end. He's a very, very, I guess, multifaceted safety for Oklahoma moving forward. Oklahoma wants Boganowski and Jaden Hardy to be the two back end guys, and they would like Powers to be kind of the bigger body, the nickel / cheetah guy that they bring in during this class. And I think he's a great pickup. David Stone is really tight with him, obviously, because he's tight with a lot of recruits on the Michigan State side. So I think that, to me, was a very, very important get for Oklahoma. Not for David Stone, but more or less to finalize that back into the defense as Oklahoma heads in to the SEC for the 2024 class. And look, Brandon Hall has done a phenomenal job. You got to give props where props is due. And it is an amazing, amazing last 2 cycles for him, Parker. Like, obviously, he started with Eric McCarty when he first arrived, right? Eric McCarty's been injured, but Eric McCarty's ceiling is so high. If he can ever get healthy, that guy is a freak athlete. He's a 4.4, 4.5 guy, very smart, high football IQ. Then, obviously, trying to think who all else he got last cycle. Help me out here. I know he got Peyton Bowen, but was there another safety last cycle?
There were 2 other safeties last cycle.
Oh, yeah, Day McCullough.
Day McCullough.
Day McCullough, yep. And then
Kendall Dolby wasn't.
Yeah, Kendall Dolby. He recruited Kendall Dolby,
yeah.
And now he's playing more of the cheetah position, kind of like what they're going to bring Reggie Powers in. So they brought really solid players in, and obviously Brandon Hall helped out with Samuel Masigo as well. So that he's been a very, very good recruiter for Oklahoma. You start off with Jaden Hardy, a top 250 guy on Rivals. Then you've got obviously Boganowski, who will undoubtedly, in my mind, be a top 250 guy when it's all said and done on Rivals and probably across the board. And then you add Reggie Powers, who is a 4-star on, and it seems like most recruiting services have him at a 4-star. So what a start for Brandon Hall. Then you've got to add the transfers that he's brought in. I mean, he's had quite the run as a recruiter, and Reggie Powers is just kind of the cherry on the top of what he's done over the last 2 cycles, in my opinion.
Look, it really is tragic that his commitment fell where it did chronologically, because nobody paid any attention to it in the moment. Nobody. Everybody was watching the fourth quarter of that OU Kansas game, and then in the aftermath of that game, nobody wanted to talk about Reggie Powers. They all wanted to talk about the loss to Kansas. So it's unfortunate that this kid wasn't done justice in his announcement. I get the feeling that when he gets on campus at Oklahoma, has the opportunity to develop and learn the system for a year or two, he's going to make people quickly forget how anticlimactic his announcement ended up being, because he is an excellent football player. The senior tape to this point has been impressive, and he is somebody that has caught a lot more eyes amongst recruiting analysts nationwide than he had going into his senior year. Obviously, the other services all moved him up already. Our folks at Rivals, I don't believe we're doing another update until late this month or early December, but it's already been decided that Reggie Powers is going to be a 4-star when the update comes out. So rest assured, that guy is a consensus blue chipper across the board. And how about that for a cherry on top, Brad? Because you used that metaphor, cherry on top. If that's really what this is for Brandon Hall's safety class, how often do you get a legit top 250 talent in Reggie Powers as your cherry on top? This isn't just some late 3-star take,
right,
that you just happen to have the room for. No, this is a dude with 3 dozen FBS offers and had plenty of other options at his disposal. I was an Ohio State, Michigan State battle for much of the spring and summer. And then he had an official visit planned to UCLA for this past weekend that obviously never happened because he pledged to OU. But for the Sooners to win that battle as efficiently as they did, I mean, we're talking a month plus a week or thereabouts from offer to commitment. For them to win that battle as quickly as they did, especially given the talent that they had already accumulated in the safety room in the class of 2024, it just goes to show you, man, Brandon Hall is truly a menace on the recruiting trail and capable of convincing just about anybody that they've got a future in Norman, Oklahoma. Even a guy that comes from Southern Ohio in Reggie Powers, even a guy that's hardly ever played safety in his life in Michael Boganowski.
Yeah. He's been unbelievable on the recruiting trail, as we both noted. Let's get 2014. Also, shout out to apparently we're back. That was interesting. We were saying on the Pac-12, yeah, I think it's Utah 100%. They are by far the best team coming into the Big 12, and quite honest, I don't think it really matters because Oklahoma's headed to the SEC. So it would have been cool though to go play at Utah, play at Arizona. I love going to Boulder, so that would have been cool to go back there. Kind of a redeal of the Big 12, but I would much rather visit Tuscaloosa, Athens. I'm never going to say I want to visit Baton Rouge. So that's not in the cards for me. But Gainesville, Florida is all right. Columbia, South Carolina is going to be nice. Knoxville, Tennessee, be pretty cool. Parker, I will never in my life sit there and say, man, I can't wait to go to Baton Rouge. No, let me rephrase that. It's not a place that I would want to spend a week at. I'll put it to you like that.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the state of Louisiana.
I like New Orleans, all right, to go visit, but
Louisiana in general just is not my speed. Apologies all for the technical difficulties with the video. We're going to get that fixed for next week. Had a little bug on our end. Nothing that should affect us in the long term, though. Apparently, we froze before we got to some of these super chats. Virgil Walker, my man, dropped us $20 and said, "You guys are a wonderful source of infotainment. It's a joy to catch you live. Thanks, guys." Shout out to my brother Parker, loving the skull cap look, Brandon. Keep on keeping on, fam. Virgil, we appreciate you, man. That guy is living in SEC territory down there in Georgia, but as diehard of a Sooner fan as you will find. And not only living in SEC territory, but doing the Lord's work, quite literally in SEC territory. We appreciate you, Virgil. And then obviously the one that we came back talking about was from Michael Munsell, who dropped $5 and just asked, who's the best team coming in the Big 12 from the Pac-12? Good news is Oklahoma really doesn't have to worry about that. Their focus is bolstering this roster as best they can to get ready for SEC competition. And obviously that's a different level, right? And I will say this, Brandon, I would be curious to hear your take on it. In 2023, and I don't think there's any question that the SEC is going to be the premier league in college football, especially once OU and Texas arrive. But in 2023, is it accurate to say that there is less of a gap between the SEC and the rest of the country than there has been the last several years?
I think so. I mean, you look at what's going on this year, and you go look at the college football rankings. Like, I thought that was pretty telling. You got two Big 12 teams. What do you have? Two Big 10 teams? Ohio State and Michigan. I think Penn State was, what are they, 11th, right?
Penn State was 11th. Yes. Yeah. So you have 4 SEC teams in the top 12. Yeah. However, Ole Miss and Missouri, how long can you realistically expect those two programs to hang in the upper echelon? Georgia and Alabama are very obviously the cream of the crop. Like,
I think Ole Miss will hang around. Missouri, no. You go look at their schedule and it's like, it's a murderer's row the rest of the time. It's not easy being a Tiger to end the season.
I look at Ole Miss. Really, the only marquee game that they've played, they lost in Tuscaloosa to Alabama. You can make the argument that LSU's a good win. They squeaked by in that one, 55-49. They squeaked by Arkansas. They squeaked by Auburn. They have played a lot of very average and in some cases below average teams very, very close. And it really does feel like that their reckoning is coming at some point, and they're just waiting to regress the mean. Now, that could happen this coming weekend against Texas A&M. I think more than likely it happens next weekend when they have to go to Athens to play at Sanford Stadium against the second-ranked Georgia Bulldogs. So I think Ole Miss is going to crash back down to earth here at some point. Obviously, I expect the same for Missouri. Alabama and Georgia, I mean, it's same story as it's been each of the last 3-4 seasons in that league. It's Bama and Georgia, and then everybody else is chasing them.
Yeah, but I think they're more susceptible this year than ever before as well. So
I would say that about Alabama, yes. I think they show some obvious vulnerabilities. I don't know, man. Georgia, to me, is kind of the new Alabama, where I'm going to have to see them lose to believe it.
Correct. Jacob Matthews, thank you so much for the super chat. Is there any chance we see Thompson on kick return or even just on offense? It baffles me. We haven't tried to use his speed more. I don't know about kickoff return mainly because of his size. The fact that he runs so fast, going into other people that are running fast and trying to come down and essentially take your head off. His body type just doesn't lead me to, and I say that, and I believe Hollywood Brown was a kick returner for OU for a couple of years, and so was D.D. Westbrook. So there's that. I just don't know how comfortable Oklahoma feels with him back there. And that reasoning, because, he's kind of slight in the britches, if you will. But on offense, totally agree. He can stretch the field. I think the bigger question is, when is Dylan Gabriel going to realize that Nick Anderson is the best wide receiver on the team?
I think Gabriel does realize that. And
His first
asked
read on
him,
that pick six.
Okay, well,
Nick Anderson's wide open.
Thing is, I asked Dylan Gabriel at post-practice availabilities last night what the offense has to do to get Nick Anderson more involved. And his answer was very interesting and pretty revealing to me, because he said, look, we got to trust the coaches, almost kind of insinuating that the decision, if you can call it that, to keep Nick Anderson only moderately involved in the game plan is more of a coaching thing than a Dylan Gabriel thing. It's obvious to anybody with eyes that Nick Anderson is the most electric playmaker on this offense. It's like, when you have a guy like that is so skilled at so many things and can find more than one way to beat a man, can get open at all three levels, and just has a nose for the end zone the way that Nick Anderson does. Obviously, I think it stands to reason you get that guy the ball as much as possible, man. Whether it falls on Gabriel, whether it falls on Jeff Lebby, whoever it falls on, that to me is, amidst a myriad of inexcusable things that happened up in Lawrence this past weekend, that was as unforgivable as any of the faux pas, if you will, was only targeting Nick Anderson once.
Yeah.
That can't happen if you want to win football games. You have to force feed the ball to your best playmakers, and objectively, Nick Anderson is as good a playmaker as you got right now.
Yeah, 100%. He's the best wide receiver on the team. They got to figure out something. They've got it really does. I think we've undervalued the loss of Andrew Anthony. So Nick Anderson's filling in that spot. He's your best wide receiver out there. And that's not a knock on Farouk. It's not a knock on Drake Stoops, because I think Drake Stoops is probably your most clutch wide receiver. I don't think there's even a question. He's your most clutch wide receiver. I think, and there's a lot of people that disagree with me on this. You got to find a way. You got to get away from the RPOs when you're trying to hit a tight end over the middle. For one, it just sucks everything in, and Dylan's not tall enough to be able to. You've got more hands to throw. He needs lanes, right? And there's a lot of issues with RPO and tight ends. Like, when you go back and you look at Braden Willis and what they were able to do with him last year, well, it's because he's more of a wide receiver, right? He was more of a hybrid guy. He could line up outside. They would run wheel routes, corner routes, all that type of stuff with him. Stogner is a pure check down over the middle tight end. And they used him on that fourth down in the first half, got 12 yards. Why wasn't that being used in the second half when you were in critical downs? They were daring them to just throw dump passes over the middle. Daring, because Dylan was just focused outside, outside, outside. It was a dare. They were everybody that I've talked to, they acknowledge, yes, they were daring, and it just never happened. So, and I know people think Stogner is overrated and all that type of stuff. I'm not here to argue you guys on that. I think he's a really good blocker, and I think he's a good tight end for what he does and what his skill set is for. But you got to use it. If you don't use it, you're just essentially just he's out there just to be out there, and that's the biggest issue I have right now with how they're doing things.
More super chats. Matt Blackwell dropped $10 and said, "Appreciate you guys. Keep up the great work."
Mm-hmm.
Michael Munsell dropped $5 and said, "The SEC's disrespect towards the Big 12 and Oklahoma is baffling. We're going to give a rude awakening to the SEC." I would just say don't get your expectations too high. Year one. Year 2 and 3, maybe it's a different conversation by then. But there's going to be it's not going to be all sunshine and roses for Oklahoma year 1 in the SEC, because it will be a tougher schedule. It will be a grind week in and week out. And when the competition takes a step up, it's not as easy to win games when you aren't playing your best football. For instance, the game that the Sooners played against UCF, they're getting beat by darn near anybody in the SEC if they play that type of football game on any given Saturday. So don't get your expectations too high in year 1. Even if the Sooners were to make a playoff run this year, which I think is very much within the realm of possibility, wrote it on a Fact or Fiction piece on the Rivals main page earlier today. I think you kind of got to draw the distinction between title contender and playoff contender. Oklahoma's probably not a title contender in 2023. They are very feasibly a playoff contender.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if Oklahoma has a 12-1, 13-1 type of season, 13-2 type of season in 2023, then I think it's all too easy for everybody to figure, okay, Sooners jumping into the SEC with Jackson Arnold at quarterback. Yeah, they're going to run roughshod on that schedule, especially because you dodge Georgia, you get Alabama at home. It's all set up relatively easy. I say that in SEC terms. Nothing is easy in the SEC. Nothing is easy in the SEC. But like, you didn't get the murderer's row of the SEC on your schedule in year 1. You got 6 very beatable opponents and Alabama. Whether they are beatable at that point depends on a lot of factors, but obviously they're the gold standard in college football for the last 15 years. So that one's going to be a challenge any way you slice it. Regardless, do not figure that Oklahoma is going to have the same type of year in the SEC come 2024 as they have in the Big 12 here in 2023, because you don't have any empirical data to work with. We have no idea how the Sooners are going to respond to that transition.
Mm-hmm.
It might be relatively seamless. It might come with a lot of very hard bumps along the road, similar to the 2022 campaign. And I'm not suggesting OU is going to go 6-7 again, but things get more difficult, a lot more difficult than many realize when you make the transition to the SEC and you're playing programs that, if they played in any other conference in America, a lot of the teams that are middle tier and even below average in the SEC would be verging on top 25 teams if they played in any other conference.
No, I agree. The one of the funniest comments I've read today is, we need the jet sweep to hit the transfer portal.
Many would agree. Many are saying
the jet sweep on short yardage and 2-point conversions. Totally agree. You don't have the guys. Not a knock on Freeman, because Freeman's fast, and I get it. It's worked on occasion. It worked against Texas, got inside the 2-yard line. But there's been times this year where you're just like, dude, if you're going to run a jet sweep, you need a Jordan Smallwood. Like, remember when they would run the jet sweep with him because he weighed 230 pounds? Okay, to get 2 yards, 230-pound tight end, going to get you 2 yards.
Well,
185-pound dude.
except except on 3rd
stretch.
and 2 in the Rose Bowl, Brandon.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Let's talk this week's game. Obviously, Oklahoma State comes in. I think they're 22nd, right? 23rd, 22nd, right? In the
college football
playoff
poll, yeah, something like that.
Which is interesting. I thought. First off, let's dive into that. Oklahoma at 9 is the committee basically telling you if you win out, you're going to the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they just told you, because they respect the Texas win or anything. What you need to happen is either one or two things if you're Oklahoma. K-State to beat Texas and then not lose a game. And then K-State to beat Kansas, and then Kansas to go 9-3, and K-State to be 10-2 going into the Big 12 title game. Or you need Texas to win out and play Texas again and beat them.
There's really only one prerequisite if Oklahoma takes care of business and they win out. The only prerequisite is either Washington or Florida State trips up, which there's a very high likelihood that one, if not both, will lose a game before the end of the regular season.
Right.
So, assuming that happens, yes, you have a very clear path. And what we are used to, Brandon, what we have become accustomed to over the years is the College Football Playoff Committee regarding Oklahoma less favorably than the AP poll. I think it says a lot that for the first time that I can recall, the College Football Playoff Committee has Oklahoma ranked higher than the AP.
They respect the defense. They essentially have talked about it over the years. Oklahoma's had a stigma of not playing defense, and now this year they played defense. They're one of the top scoring defenses. I think they're in the top 20 in scoring defense in the country. When you do those type of things and you have a top 5 scoring offense in the country, committees like that are going to look at you and say, okay, will they be a top 10 Texas team? They slipped up on the road, and they take in consideration injuries, by the way. So Oklahoma was up when Stutzman went out. Oklahoma was up when Tawi Walker went out. Those things they take in consideration when ranking, and it's not an excuse. It's a fact of how they go about their little bullet points that they use for all the teams that they're going to rank. And those were used, from what I've heard from a couple of people in the rankings for Oklahoma, was the fact that they ended up being banged up by the end of the game. They were leading until all that stuff happened. Oklahoma fans and media people like us are like, that doesn't matter. You still should have beat Kansas. But they're still going to take that in consideration. And they take into consideration that they came back, they beat Texas, and they've looked really good up until the last 2 weeks. So when you play both sides of the ball and you're decent on both sides of the ball, the committee usually rewards you with rankings because they think you're more of a complete team than some other teams that may struggle on both sides of the ball. And I think that's where Oklahoma kind of got away with it this year for the first time ever, I might add, because normally it is, yeah, we're going to drop them back a little bit because their defense is a piece of crap. Thank you, Alex Grinch. He is gone now. So anyway, it doesn't matter though, Parker. Like, we're talking about this playoff, Big 12. You lose this week, you play like you did the last 2 weeks in Stillwater, and you're getting ran out of that stadium. You are getting ran out of that stadium. So Oklahoma better come to play. They better get refocused. It's not playing hard, Parker. They played hard. They played unfocused, though, and they played with lack of details and fundamentals. And those 3 things, anytime you play that way, it doesn't matter how hard you play. It doesn't matter how bad the team is. You play that way, you're probably going to lose 75% of those games. And this time, Oklahoma was on the losing end, where the week before, they got away with it. They got away with it. Kansas was too good of a team. There's a reason why they're in the top 25 in the college football playoff poll, and the reason why they're 6-2. They're a good football team. They're not your grandpappy's Kansas. So you better play this week, and you better figure out a way to stop Ollie Gordon while not giving up the pass. And the defensive line better come to play and not sit around and worrying about – you should worry about gap integrity and stuff, Parker. But I talked to so many people around Norman, and they said that was the biggest issue, was the defensive line was so worried about getting outside of their gaps that they played kind of hesitant, and it cost Oklahoma, particularly in the passing game on defense. There was no pass rush, zero pass rush against Jason Bean last week.
Now, we did have a super chat from Russell Jenkins, who said, let's get a shout out and a reread of Mongo's super chat from earlier. Mongo's super chat has disappeared from my feed somehow.
I'll tell you what it was. I can remember it. It was, I don't know how they think it's so hard to go undefeated. He goes undefeated all the time on NCAA 2014.
Oh, that's right.
And
he shouted out Phil Sexton. That's right.
Yep. And we said Philip Sexton was the GOAT. He's one of the best parents that we've both ever dealt with. He's an amazing human being. Jake Sexton's an amazing human being as well. So one of my all-time favorites. And played really well last weekend, by the way. So add that to that super chat. But thank you, Russell Jenkins, for the remembering. And by the way, I recommend anybody, if you can go online and find the modded NCAA on your PC, PlayStation, Xbox 360, totally worth the buy. Totally worth it. Play it with my kids all the time. It's a great game. Great game.
You mean like with current updated rosters?
Oh yeah, current updated roster. The everything is up. They have playoffs on there. They even have the 12-team playoff mod on there now.
Oh hell!
And they have all the new alternatives. They got the old rough, and they got the all black Unity uniforms. Everything's on there.
That's pretty amazing.
It's badass, dude.
What's Tawi Walker's speed rating?
I think like 82. It's not very fast.
I was about to say.
But his breaking tackle, I think, is like 96, something like. It's pretty good. Anyways, so what are your keys for this week? Let's dive into that. Let's dive into the keys. We'll talk a little recruiting here in just a minute, but let's dive into the keys for this week's ball game, because it's the last Bedlam game.
There's one key.
Fun. It should have been
There's one.
Should have been night game, by the way. Should have been a night game. No Bedlam night game. I'm okay with 2:30.
I'm okay with the 2:30.
I'm not.
There's one key to victory. There's one key to victory because Oklahoma State has one path to victory. It's Ollie Gordon.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State's going to ride Ollie Gordon. Oklahoma State will go as Ollie Gordon goes. If you are Oklahoma, I think really all you have to do is minimize Ollie Gordon's impact on the football game. You're probably not going to completely power him down. He, as of right now, is the best running back in college football. To a certain extent, you're going to have to let him get his. You're going to have to be okay with that. But letting him get his doesn't necessarily mean you give up 200 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground, right? You let him do that, then you got problems. You got issues. To me, if I'm Oklahoma, if I'm Brent Venables, and I have no doubt this is what Brent Venables is actively doing, man, you sell out to stop the run. You put an extra man in the box. You load up. You make Alan Bowman beat you with his arm, because I am not convinced, nor I think is anyone, that Alan Bowman can win this game for Oklahoma State with his arm. As long as you don't let Ollie Gordon beat you, you will win this football game.
I'm not gonna bash on Alan. I've known that kid since he was like 3, so I'll refrain from that. So his sister played on my cousin's national title soccer select team, the Dallas Stars, or the Texas Stars, the '93 Texas Stars. They won the national title, and they both were the bridesmaids and whatever, the maid of honors in each other's weddings. So,
and his dad played at Penn State back in the day.
He did, and I've worn the national title ring. That was like one of the coolest ones. I'm 19, 20 years old, maybe 21 at most, and I'm the national title was actually the semifinals was actually in Oklahoma. So I go down, I'm hanging out with him and his family, Bowman and his family, and his dad pulls out the ring. He's like, "You want to wear a national title ring?" They beat Georgia, right? I think it was '83 national title.
Yeah, '83.
I wore it because he caught the winning touchdown there, and I wore the national title, and it was the biggest ring I've ever seen, blingiest ring I've ever seen in my life. It was pretty cool. So, good family, great kid. But yeah, you're right. Like he's not very mobile. He's got a good arm, and he is a good football player. I want everybody to understand that, because remember, he took Oklahoma put Oklahoma on the ropes before he collapsed his lung in 2018 in Lubbock. So he can play. This game, the moment's not going to be too big for him. He's been in those moments before. It's going to be Oklahoma, but you don't want Ollie Gordon to beat you. You want to, if you're going to lose the ball game, you want Alan Bowman to be the one to beat you. And that, I think that's going to be Oklahoma's kind of what they're going to go in and do, kind of like what they did against Kansas. And they had Kansas on the ropes until they didn't, and they got completely out of sorts defensively. Again, Oklahoma probably wins that game against Kansas, Parker. Gentry Williams is in there, and Danny Stutzman doesn't get hurt. But guess what? They weren't in there, and they were hurt. That's part of the game. You lost. No excuses. But if they have both those guys back this week, I like Oklahoma's chances, particularly if Danny Stutzman can move. I think that's going to be key, because if not, I mean, Kip Lewis proved that he is more than capable of coming in and playing. And let me ask you this, Parker.
Yeah.
If you're Brent Venables, are you opposed to sliding Danny Stutzman into middle linebacker, the Mike, so that he isn't having to move sideline to sideline as much and playing more in a box, and then putting Kip Lewis at the wheel?
No, in fact, I think that's what I would do. I think that's what I would do.
I agree.
Got to have Stutzman on the field if he's able to go. And Kip Lewis has been fantastic this season for Oklahoma when he's gotten the opportunity to make plays. He plays with a tremendous level of instinct and he's impressed, man. Continually impressed. I just kind of thought it was flashes earlier in the season. Didn't really think we would get to a point where some people favored him over Jaren Kanak, but we're at that point now. No doubt about it. Let's loop back around and talk recruiting here, because the chat is popping off about it. You have 2 uncommitted targets left on the board in the class of 2024, and they both happen to be offensive linemen. Grant Brix, Eddie Pierre-Louis. And we've been covering those 2 recruitments in great detail on OUinsider.com. If you are not a member over there, would highly suggest that you go jump on board, because you're going to get far more from behind the paywall from the OU Insider board than you will from this live. And we try to share a lot of information on this live, but there's a lot that you can only get at OUinsider.com. Here's what it amounts to. And I went up to see Brix on Friday up in Lamar's, Iowa, frigid Lamar's, Iowa. I understand there are some folks that are fed up with that kid's recruitment because they view him as indecisive. And guess what? It's going to be a little while yet before he announces. I'm just letting you know now. So don't expect anything to drop here in the next few days. There's going to be some time. There's going to be, I would say, at least another couple weeks before we know definitively where Brix is at. What's up?
Larry McDonald, those who know, just came in the chat and said, I think we get both those O-linemen.
Okay. Come on, Larry. Larry's got that positive outlook going.
And he might have a connection or two to know what's going on behind the scenes.
He might. That's very much within the realm of possibility.
Yep.
But with Brix, here's how I look at things. It's hard for him to say no to Nebraska because he is a small town kid and Nebraska is close. It's also hard for him to say no to Oklahoma because he knows, and his circle kind of knows, if you want to be an offensive tackle in the NFL, you want to have a football career in the long term, Oklahoma is where you go to get developed. He will be back in Norman on November 11th. He is scheduled to be at Kansas State on November 25th. I, for one, am not convinced that Kansas State visit happens because I view this as an Oklahoma-Nebraska battle more than an OU, NU, K-State battle. K-State, it seems, has been progressively fading for the last couple of months. And to be honest, I am kind of surprised he's taking another visit there, but he said, look, he wants to tick all the boxes. He told me he wishes he would have taken these visits at the beginning of the season so he could have just made a decision and had it over with. He said, I thought I could make this call without seeing game days at these three schools, and I just can't. So I'm going to visit them all. Nebraska got the first visit this past weekend. Oklahoma, as I mentioned, will get him on November 11th, and Kansas State will get him tentatively on November 25th. I still like Oklahoma just because I know how much of a preference from a family standpoint there is for Oklahoma, and that seems somewhat counterintuitive because you'd think, okay, the family would like to keep the kid close to home and they'd like to see him in Nebraska. And like, to be clear, every member of that family is willing to let Grant make his own decision. And in fact, they are insistent upon this decision belonging to Grant and nobody else. But they understand as well as anybody what a shrewd and wise business decision it is for an offensive tackle to play at Oklahoma for somebody like Bill Bedenbaugh. So I tend to favor OU, and I also think this is one of these recruitments where the last visit, the last chance to make an impression on this kid could be significant. And so the fact that Oklahoma gets him on campus after Nebraska, because again, I'm not really viewing Kansas State as a serious threat. The fact that Oklahoma gets him after Nebraska effectively allows the Sooners to have the final word between the two teams. And from that standpoint, looking at it from that perspective, I like OU.
I mean, how do you feel about EPL? Did you say that?
Flip a coin. Shot in the dark at this point. Like, I don't know. That one has changed so much. It has evolved so much. It has flip-flopped so much that at this point, I'm not really sure of anything. What I do know and what I can say is that Eddie has told Oklahoma all of the right things, all of the things that a coaching staff would want to hear and expect to hear from a kid who is going to commit to them in the end. That said, it seems that from the UCF side, the Knights have heard a lot of those same things too.
Yeah, he's supposed to be here for the West Virginia game. Believe it when I see it. That's where I'm at.
And here's my thing, Brandon. He
did not go to UCF last week, though.
No, he did not. Here's how I see it. Here's how I perceive it. You tell me if I'm wrong. I think it is as simple as he comes to Norman on November 11th. He's a Sooner. He doesn't show up in Norman on November 11th. He belongs to UCF. Is that too simplistic?
No, I'm kind of with you on that, actually. Man, people figured I was 5'9". I mean, maybe in 8th grade, I guess. They're saying I look more slender with the cap, and everybody wonders why I have this on. Folks, I had to go coach my kids' practice. I literally, Parker can vouch for this. I walked right through the door and we started the live. Like, I hooked everything up. Bam, we started the live. So I haven't got a chance to change from my kids' coaching my kids' practice because I got a big game tomorrow.
Russ threw us another $20 in the super chat. Said, mark your calendars. OU Insider Tailgate on November 11th and November 24th. Also, whatever bowl game Oklahoma plays in. There we go, Russ. I'm looking forward to it. The OU Insider Tailgate has been fantastic on every occasion that we've done it so far. And by the way, I'll add one more thing about bricks. If you want to look at this through the lens of an encouraging pattern, we talk all the time about how girlfriends are undefeated, right? That's one of the patterns that you look out for in recruiting. You know who else is undefeated? Jacob Sexton as an OV host. Every single player that Jacob Sexton has ever hosted on an OV at the University of Oklahoma has ended up committing to the University of Oklahoma.
That's
Who do you
facts.
suppose hosted Grant Bricks?
And that fits,
There you
by the
go.
way. Yeah, if anybody knows Sexton's personality, Bricks and Sexton, perfect. That was the most perfect host that you could have for Grant Bricks by far. Boomer asked if we ran any jet sweeps at our practice today. Actually, we ran 2, but they're not goal line jet sweeps. So, anyways, I digress. Let's talk about our predictions for this week, because you know what? Before we do that, let's talk about what could happen this week in recruiting, because
there's a decision coming tomorrow.
There is.
And there's 2 decisions coming in the next week and a half. We'll have an opportunity to talk about the latter decision because it will come 2 days before his announcement the next time we live stream. But you have Marcus James, 2025 3-star athlete, set to commit tomorrow. And you have Alex Shieldknight, 2025 3-star defensive end out of Wagoner, Oklahoma, committing on November 10th. 2 decisions, Brandon, that are expected to go OU's way at this time.
And if you're on OU Insider, there may be November may not be done. So we'll leave it at that. We're going to leave it at that. If you're on OU Insider, November may not be done. It may not be done sooner rather than later. We'll leave it at that. Done talking about that. But as far as the next, 10 days go, I think Oklahoma fans are going to like it. It's going to be very 2025 heavy, but it's going to be very, very. The pickups are going to be really good players. We're just going to leave it at that. I think when you talk about that class in 25, we get asked all the time, do we think that class is going to be ranked higher than 2024? I think a lot of it depends on how the services rank a few of the guys that are already committed and how Oklahoma, I guess, they got to close out. If they close out really well on the offensive line side, and we kind of think they're going to with how things are trending, if they can get 2 or 3 of those big names out of Texas, because as good as the defensive line class was in 2024, offensive line's equally good in 25. It may be better across the board. It's insane. We've talked about it, Parker. It's lining up for Oklahoma to make a really good run early in the SEC. Things couldn't have lined up more perfect for the trenches for Oklahoma on both sides of the ball. No lie. 2024 defensive line could absolutely be elite when it's already elite, but it could be elite come National Signing Day, come February. And then you add the portal portion to it. Like, it could get really interesting for Oklahoma on the defensive line side. Offensive line side, they could really close out strong in 24, but just be downright elite in 25. And when you add those 2 things together, by 26, 27, Oklahoma could be just an absolute juggernaut in the SEC. And that may be putting it lightly, Parker. That may be putting it lightly, but they're very, very focused on building up the front 7 on the defense and the defensive line, or the offensive line on the other side, just getting strong elite guys, whether through the portal, whether through the high school ranks. And I think there's this notion, Parker, that Bill Beatonbow's not doing a good job because he's not landing all these high school kids. Well, Bill Beatonbow's figured some things out, and he's just gone, you know what?
Is
I'm
recruiting?
Go ahead. It does it matter where they come from? If you get an elite guy in the portal,
recruiting a transfer somehow less impressive than recruiting a high school prospect?
I think for rankings purposes, for some people, yes, and I think that matters a lot to people. So I get that.
Fine.
I get it, but look at some of the transfers that Beatonbow's brought in and have been really good at Oklahoma. I mean, you can date back the dude from Virginia. What was his name? Ended up being
RJ
all Big 12.
Proctor.
RJ Proctor, all Big 12. Juan
Was he
Morris.
really?
Well, I think he was on second or third team. I couldn't remember. Did he not
Okay.
make all Big 12? I thought he made all Big 12.
I didn't recall that, but that was
Maybe it was honorable
2019.
mention. I can't remember. I
Yeah.
thought I read something like that. Anyway,
Um,
he had a really good year. RJ Proctor had a really good year. Juan Morris ended up being a third round draft pick. Right? Who else has been good through the transfer portal for Oklahoma?
Tyler Guyton.
Tyler
I mean, heck,
Guyton,
that guy's getting
first-round
first
pick,
round
potentially.
buzz.
Yes.
McCade Matire is a 5-year Power 5 starter.
Yep.
And then you have Walter Rouse, obviously, who's, I mean, he's already got a cult hero status in Sooner lore because of the block on 2 different guys that he made to hold off the rush and allow Dylan Gabriel to throw the winning touchdown pass in the Red River Showdown to Nick Anderson. But I think here's what's worth noting. Bill Bedenbaugh has never had a transfer, at least to my recollection, that has come in and just been a scrub and sat the bench. Even Robert Conjul, right, who was not nearly as highly regarded in the portal, ended up making starts at multiple positions along the offensive line and playing pretty well for Oklahoma. So, like, whatever way you want to spin it, you just have to give Bedenbaugh credit, because if you're going to say that those guys were already good when they got there, well, then you got to give him credit for being able to recruit dudes that other programs wanted and pursued and being successful in recruiting those dudes. And if you want to say, well, they weren't that good and it's not all that impressive that he got to OU because who was he really competing with? Well, then you got to give him credit for developing those guys into what they are today.
Yeah, and I mean, I would assume that he's going to land another, 2 or 3 big time names in the transfer portal this year. I would almost bet on it, to be honest with you. And look, Parker and I aren't going to sit here and say that if they miss out on Bricks and EPL, or if they don't land one of the two, that it's not the offensive line, high school offensive line class is a bit of a disappointment. No, I get it. And I think Parker would agree with that. It's not exactly going to light the world on fire or look real good on paper. But over the years, those type of players have been the ones that ended up being the first rounders for Bedenbaugh, or the second or third rounders for Bill Bedenbaugh, because he develops them. He wants those gritty guys that are going to come in. They may not be the best out of high school, but that he sees some traits in them, and that if he can tap into those and he can develop them, they end up being all world guys. Look, Cody Ford was just, a lot of people looked at him. He was a 3-star and they're like, yeah, he's not that great. He ended up being one of the best offensive linemen Bedenbaugh's ever coached. Hey, Ben Powers was a 2-star JUCO that nobody wanted except for Bill Bedenbaugh. So when you look at that, to me, it's just, you got to trust the guy. And I get that the right guard has been just utterly not good this year. I get it. They seem to have found something with Caden Green at left guard. He's a freshman. He has his ups, he has his downs, but when he's good, he's really, really good, Parker. That right guard spot, if they can get McGuire to get healthy again, like fully healthy, I think you're looking at a offensive line unit of Guyton, Caden Green, Rame, McGuire, and Rouse, or Sexton, doesn't matter, and it being a really solid unit up front. And I wouldn't be opposed, and I don't know how Rouse would look at this, but if you're Bill Bedenbaugh, would you try Rouse at right guard and put Sexton at right tackle and just see how it goes, or excuse me, Sexton at left tackle, Guyton at right tackle, and then put Rouse at right guard potentially? I don't know, man. I'm just trying to figure some things out that may make the offensive line unit better as a whole, because they've got to figure out the interior unit. If they do not, Oklahoma's going to continue to struggle to run the ball. And what a week to figure it out at Bedlam. Show up and just start road grading people. like they did with Kansas until Tawee Walker. But you've got to trust another running back outside of Tawee Walker. Like the guy that ran for 60 yards in the fourth quarter. Gavin Sawchuk ran an 8-yard run in the first quarter, right? It's 3rd and 2. They don't go to him. They punt. And guess what happens, Parker? They don't go back to Gavin Sawchuk after that till what, the fourth quarter? Third quarter? Middle of the third? Is that correct? He had an 8-yard run, and then they never went back to him until the second half. And I get that Tawee Walker was doing well, but you probably saved Tawee Walker, and he probably plays the full game if instead of bringing in Javonte Barnes to block or be a decoy or be the lead guy for Dylan Gabriel, you actually bring in Sawchuk and you actually try to run the ball with him and let him get in the groove and see what happens, because you need a yin and a yang. Am I crazy? Like, you need a yin and a yang. You got to have that in the backfield. You can't just rely on one dude the whole game. They didn't even do that with Eric Gray. Of course, it was a different Javonte Barnes back then. Way different. Oh, what are your thoughts on that? Because they went to Javonte Barnes in the final drive the week before the final drive, they go to who? Or the second to last drive, excuse me, second to last drive. They went to
Javonte Barnes. Or no, okay.
Sawchuk,
yeah.
and he freaking delivered.
In the UCF game, yes.
Yeah, and he delivered. Why wouldn't you do that? Why would you go to the guy that hasn't played all year? I never understand that. I don't understand that.
I think you ride Tawee Walker as far as Tawee Walker will take you, and Sawchuk's your change of pace at this point. I just think it's very clear that, at least for right now, Walker's your most reliable option, and you got to have reliable right now.
Yeah, I agree. And people are saying, I get that Sawchuk's questionable in pass blocking. Totally, I get it. Okay. I get that he's had his ups and downs pass blocking, but I mean, that's where that's why the change of pace is there. So in a passing down, you have Tawee Walker in there. So you don't know whether they're going to run or pass. Like, you knew when Javonte Barnes came up there, remember he was lined up in front of and to the side, right between the guard and the tackle of Dylan Gabriel, just lined up there. Like, you knew they were going to pass the ball. Like, you knew it was coming. But he did it to pick up the blitz, and I totally understand that. But if you have Tawee Walker in there, you don't have to do that. You can leave him back there, and you can at least use the play action. You can't use the play action with Javonte Barnes back there. You're not going to hand him the ball. He runs in the back of the offensive lineman. Like, I don't know. They got to figure something out. And they got to figure it out quick. What's your prediction for this week?
I have Oklahoma. I like the Sooners to get back on track, and I think they win this game. I'm going to say 38-24. 38-24 Sooners.
That's a good pick. I have Oklahoma, and I'm going to go 34-24 Oklahoma. I think it's a close ball game. Oklahoma pulls away in the fourth quarter. I think that's generally I think Oklahoma overpowers them defensively, and this is if they have Gentry and Stutzman, because I mean we Kanai Walker he wasn't it.
No, he wasn't.
It wasn't it. He got lost so much. So I don't know. All right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. We apologize earlier for the 2 or 3 minute delay there, as far as we got technical difficulties lined up for you guys. But this is always and will forever be powered by Ollipop. So we want to thank Ollipop for powering and being the proud sponsor of OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live and all of our podcasts and video, nonetheless. If you're not on OU Insider, Parker said it earlier, we have so much information. I got a mailbag full of questions. I'm doing a chat, and I've got mailbag full of like in-depth questions on recruiting and team stuff, behind the scenes stuff that I'm answering. We'll have up later tonight. I'm trying to do a part 1 and a part 2. So I'm trying to get 8 to 10 questions done, but I think I got 8 already. I'm trying to get 2 more potentially tonight finished up, have it posted later on tonight, and then tomorrow into Friday have the final 8 to 10 questions answered for you guys on OU Insider. It's loads and loads of good, great content. Parker has a ton of content. We'll be out and about covering high school football games, getting interviews, all sorts of stuff this week. It's going to be a fun week on OU Insider with Bedlam coming up, and then we'll be heading to BYU the following week to cover Oklahoma at BYU before they at home. They'll be at home for West Virginia, correct? At home for West Virginia, and then we'll be going to BYU. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun couple of weeks on OU Insider. Make sure you're there. $9.99 can get you a whole month. We'll get you all the way through almost to National Signing Day, early National Signing Day. So there's going to be a lot of drama over the next month in recruiting, and we'll have it for you on OU Insider. We've stayed ahead of everybody, and you'll see that. You will see that coming up here soon this week or next week, potentially, as we continue to stay ahead of the curve on all things recruiting. You'll understand it soon. But anyways, that's it. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider. You can join us for a year, $99.95, or you can do a month, $9.95. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube. We're over 13,200 subscribers. Can't thank you Sooners fans enough. And we would like to give you 5 stars, thumbs up, whatever you do on any of the podcast platforms. Again, thank you guys so much for watching us, listening to us. Wherever you guys are out, we feel blessed to be able to do that. For Parker Thune, for Spencer Forsythe, my name is Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed day.